Hello everybody, Venom here and welcome to another Halo 3 ODST reaction video. Now, one of you guys in my comments shot me this link and I'm sorry I didn't know the username, so sorry about that, but you know who you are. Only one person sent me that link and it's basically the unsolved Easter egg of Halo 3 ODST. That's quite a new video too, so interesting, right? Easter eggs are a fascinating subject. Unsolved Easter eggs are pretty cool, you know? So I'm just gonna go ahead and start this video. Before I do that though, Rocket Slot here put a lot of effort into his videos, so please click in the link down in the description below to access his video. Give him a like, give him a view, give him a sub. I want to help my fellow YouTubers with the hard work that they put in their content. And just like that, boys, let's watch this video.
Halo 3 ODST was such a special game when it first released in 2009, and what's really unique about it is that it was a self-contained story made by a smaller team of developers at Bungie. And one thing that really made Halo 3 ODST stand out was that it had this gripping story centered on uncovering what happened within the narrative. And while on the surface, the story of this game was one that was absolutely captivating to fans, there's always been something about Halo 3 ODST that has intrigued so many people within the Halo community. But what if all along, some of the developers at Bungie hid another narrative that existed right in front of us this whole time?
What, developers hiding stuff in the game? Who would do that?
One that could be told through a series of clues, symbols, and Easter eggs that even to this day, over 11 years later, remains one of the biggest unsolved mysteries in the entire Halo franchise, despite it actually being confirmed by a Bungie employee in 2011. Today, we wanted to take a look at the unsolved mystery of New Mombasa.
Oh, okay. That looks cool. Alright, guys.
One thing that's really interesting about ODST is how the game's core story emphasizes this search for what happened to you and your squad. You play as the rookie and you're tasked with finding items that could link you back up with your allies and escape the city overrun with the Covenant. But with New Mombasa giving players access to one of the largest open areas in a Halo game for its time, Bungie put more than just a few objective items throughout the city, which were shrouded in mystery. Whether the city had cool phones that could give you access to an interesting audio log story, or secret rooms that you're able to access for vehicles and weapons, New Mombasa had a unique atmosphere that constantly brought players back to the game to truly leave no stone unturned.
I do agree that Halo 3 ODST is probably one of the most replayable Halo that I've played so far, right? The more open structure leads itself more for a player like me, you know, who really likes open world RPGs a bit more, to maybe give it another go. Like, I enjoyed every of the games that I've played in the Halo franchise, but like, I feel like I'm pretty much done with them, you know? I could play Legendary and all that stuff, but that's like a personal challenge that, at least for now, I'm not really interested in. ODST, though, is the kind of game that if I were to head back into the franchise, that would probably be like the game I would return to. Halo 3 too, actually, it's pretty good. Yeah, but yeah, interesting.
And while players like Luke and I have played through ODST many times now, we never really thought more about some of these finer oddities that we've overlooked throughout the years that were right there in front of us this whole time. But that was only until we met Tepikvet, a longtime member of the Halo community and admin of the #1 French Halo community, Halo Creation.
French? Oh, un français! Un cousin français? Ho ho ho! Pain baguette! All that shit. If there's French people watching this video, they're gonna be like, fucking Quebecer motherfucker.
A decade ago, when Halo 3 ODST first came out, Tepik was heavily involved in various Halo community message boards where many players had noticed that there was something really unique going on in certain areas of New Mombasa on the level Mombasa streets. And if you played through Halo 3 ODST, you probably have actually noticed that in various areas of New Mombasa, if you activate your visor, you can see these walls of glyphs scattered across the areas where you may find engineers, also known as Huragan.
I think I've seen those. These definitely look somewhat familiar.
These symbols not only aesthetically look really cool, and a lot of people chalk them up to just be a really unique design choice to kind of highlight the visor mode that Bungie introduced in ODST, but also resulted in a large portion of the community wondering if maybe there was something more here. It wouldn't be the first time that Bungie would be involved in some pretty serious and intricate Easter eggs, like some of the ARGs Bungie did back in the day. For instance, to promote Halo 2, there was a huge interactive real-life treasure hunt that was all based around a website and a code decryption just to get hype for Halo 2, which was called I Love Bees. And Bungie is known for continuously hiding things throughout their Halo games. So seeing something like
I love that shit, man.
Like these symbols on walls made a lot of players question whether or not there was something more to what was going on here. And interestingly enough, as it turns out, some of the writers who worked on that ARG for Halo 2 ended up working on ODST's side narrative or Easter egg narrative, Sadie's Story, which are those audio logs, and we'll actually come back to that a little bit later. But just shortly after the release of Halo 3 ODST, thread after thread and conversation after conversation throughout the Halo community began to pop up, and eventually some members in the community were so intrigued by these symbols that the quest to get to the bottom of what the
I'm sorry.
The Halo community began to pop up, and eventually some members in the community were so intrigued by these symbols that the quest to get to the bottom.
What? Holy shit, that move. I'm sorry, I completely got sidetracked. What the fuck was that, dude? Holy.
Of what these glyphs actually could mean started up. Now, there were so many efforts and collaborative investigations from various subsets of the Halo community, like the Secret Glyph Project, who tried to break down what these symbols could possibly mean. There were people theorizing and drawing links to other oddities found in ODST. I mean, there were odd signs with weird symbols throughout the city, and people noticed other little oddities, like weapons that made it into cutscenes that were not even in the game as usable weapons.
Oh, that makes sense, though. That makes sense, okay? Because I'm gonna explain to you guys a bit, like, production-wise, in the pipeline, you know, like, you have different departments, like design, sound, art, all that good stuff, right? You guys know about that. But some departments work earlier or later than some others, right? Writers usually have a lot of their work at the start of production, and then the more it goes on, the less they have to do. They still have like menu text, and all that stuff to do when the project progresses. So like they're not lacking job, but like audio guys usually like a big part of their job comes after the mission designers are done, because you know the mission's done, so now they have a full view of what they have to do, etc. Cutscenes are one of the things that are planned in advance. And because like they need a lot of time to, you know, animate and realize their stuff, right? So I'm gonna guess here at what happened is that they had gun ideas and they included them in the cinematic, and you know the weapon got cut. It was hard to design. It was like unbalanced, or they lacked the manpower to actually make it fully functional in the game. But the model was probably already done, so for the cutscene they were like, yeah, we can't like take the time to actually like reposition the player holding the gun and everything. We require too much work. Players are not gonna really like, you know, notice it. Hardcore fans will though, and they decided to just leave it in. You know, that makes a lot of sense to me, production wise.
There were places that looked like they could be accessed, but always seemed to be just out of reach. And then on top of all of that, there were references to the poet T.S. Eliot, just like in Halo 2 and 3, which made a lot of people speculate as to whether or not that would lead into something else. But a lot of these leads never got anywhere, and were never anything that could really be tied back to what these symbols on the wall could mean. Don't get me wrong, there were a lot of great theories and ideas as to what some of these engineer glyphs could possibly mean, and even Joseph Staten, the lead writer for Halo 3 ODST, said in an interview that there was a story behind these glyphs. Now, a lot of members in the Halo community pointed out that the glyphs were often found in areas with engineers, and Joseph Staten even went on to confirm that they were in fact drawn and made by the engineers. But outside of theories and speculation and countless hours of players trying to solve these mysteries, all this time later, nothing was ever found. It wasn't even until recently that Tepig decided to personally take on this bizarre our mystery. Luke and I were hanging out with Tepig in an Xbox Live party when he actually introduced us to some of these mysteries and leads that he had been spending some time re-investigating, and honestly, we were really intrigued. With the hundreds of theories and links out there from past communities who had tried to uncover the story behind these mysteries, we were mesmerized looking through community posts online, and it seemed like at every turn there was a new discovery or a new theory.
Oh my god.
Feeling nostalgic to ODST and this mystery, he decided to double down on researching all of this project and even let Luke and I tag along to see what his findings would be along the way. And we gotta give him credit here because he managed to scrub so many different communities throughout the years for whatever findings they had found along the way, and then spent a ton of time catching Luke and I back up to speed on what the community knows as a whole so far and where we are right now. In a way, it was really exciting to reignite the search, basing it off of findings of the community as a whole, and use this collective research as the base for our own investigation. It was actually a late night after
what the hell, man,
that we did when Tepig first took Luke and I on a walkthrough of New Mombasa, and seeing these glyphs up close alongside Tepig was actually quite interesting, as Tepig was able to point out the similarities between certain glyphs and the oddities in some of the others. For the most part, majority of the glyphs are in this Y shape, though in some cases there's these other symbols that are Y glyphs that have smaller glyphs that can easily vary instance to instance. And Tepig had really noticed that for the most part, the glyphs that only have Ys without other glyphs around it were often found in areas with dead elites. Now, of course, in the context of the greater story of Halo, it can be assumed that these elites were executed by brutes, but technically speaking, ODST should have potentially taken place weeks before the Great Schism happened, so seeing these dead elites here aren't actually a result of the inner conflict or warfare happening within the Covenant ranks just yet. This was likely a cold-blooded betrayal, and seeing these Y glyphs all over the place did have this eerie effect on kind of looking through and trying to figure out what is going on here and what the greater story is. And these glyphs, the more you start to notice them and look for them, you start to realize that there are a lot of them. And Tepig went through all of the glyphs on all of New Mombasa. There's actually 266 glyphs.
Jesus. Yeah, because like now that he mentions it, they are everywhere. I did not really question them when I was playing, but they are everywhere. That is so cool. That is so cool.
Scattered throughout, Tepig counted every single one of them, and at first, it was a thought that maybe these dead elite bodies scattered all around the New Mombasa streets, and the Ys that often were found amongst them were possibly symbols of the engineers to honor or mourn the elites. Though Tepig kind of put these to rest by debunking them for two main reasons. First off, the dead elite bodies can only be found in one sector of New Mombasa, Sector 6, the one in which you actually begin the Teari Plaza mission. And these bodies actually aren't located in the same spot where you would find them in the Teari Plaza mission, which only should have taken place about 6 hours earlier. And during the New Mombasa Streets mission, all of them have Y signs, and sometimes a lot of them too, nearby. It gets even weirder when you go to this area, which we called Squidhenge, which is really unique because it has this very unique glyph that has the sad superintendent face on top of it, which is one of the rarer glyphs that you don't typically see when you're looking at the standard glyphs along the way. This is actually probably what led many people to speculate that the engineers were mourning elites in the first place. But when we start piecing together where all these glyphs show up in the grand scheme of ODST, there's clearly more going on here. And this is a unique symbol that we'll come back to in a bit. But while we're on the topic of odd glyphs, on a different odd occurrence, we can actually find these Y signs without any dead elites nearby as well. And it's also one of the only occurrences where these signs paint the walls outside of Sector 6, which is really interesting because when we're trying to paint together what each symbol could possibly mean, finding one odd one out or one that stands out kind of makes us want to draw more attention to it and try to figure out why this specific area is different from all the other ones that have at least something tying them together. Interestingly enough, this time there's this huge empty circle glyph, which, that stands out off of the quote-unquote stories that Joe Staten said, and mind you, in his interview he actually said that they specifically involve their Forerunner their origins, these glyphs do at least somewhat possibly remind us of that of a Halo ring, especially knowing that the Paragox are essentially made by the Forerunners directly. And if we want to look at them kind of in the same way, like an inspired hieroglyphic from ancient Egyptian times, we could also argue that maybe these Y glyphs resemble a Forerunner Y ship or key ship, just like the Prophet of Truth's Dreadnought. And actually, after we finished writing the script for this video, I even noticed that there's literally a giant Y glyph on the base of the Dreadnought during the cutscene in Halo 2, which kind of was very obvious to see if you've spent any time at all on ODST staring at these glyphs for a really long time. Still, as we're trying to piece together what we know and what these could possibly mean, it doesn't explain anything about this empty circle in the courtyard, and why is it here in the first place? It's just so random that we have a courtyard that has this big circle or Halo ring glyph just sitting here. So when Tepig was trying to investigate this, his main idea was to check out the mirror of the courtyard in District 3. Now,
right, because some areas are mirrored, right? To save on some time, like some areas repeat themselves. Yeah, this one's mirrored. Yeah, you can see it. This one is mirrored right here. Like that part here is the same as this part here. Interesting. Very interesting. Yep, that's the same right there. This one is mirrored also. Yep.
Investigate this, his main idea was to check out the mirror of the courtyard.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, this is something you might have noticed when you're playing through ODST, and maybe you've even gotten lost because of it, but due to the way that the game was designed, Mombasa Street's urbanism is actually made up of mirror districts in several sectors, which means that they basically will have the same layout in one district as another district, and for the most part, every district has a mirror version that you also can access. For instance, districts 3 and 8 are the same. This is actually really useful when we're trying to study these different glyphs, because we can compare and contrast areas by checking their mirrored section. And for whatever reason, this courtyard with this unique glyph and Y signs without dead elites around it does not have an accessible mirrored courtyard. Odd. Out of all of the districts, they all had their own mirrored counterpart, except this courtyard specifically is completely locked off. And we have experienced glitching outside of maps, and Tepig had no problem finding a way to teach us how to break out of this one. But if we attempt to go to the mirrored courtyard, where technically this sector should be, by breaking out of the map, you find that this section just isn't there. It doesn't exist. Instead, you get this big black block that just doesn't let you enter. Okay, so some of this stuff might be a lot, and it might be getting a little confusing, but to fully investigate everything that's going on here, we kind of have to nosedive into everything that people have uncovered over the years and keep track of the differences between some of these glyphs. Going back to Squidhenge, and remember, that was the little courtyard area that had the sad glyph we talked about earlier that was pretty rare. There was actually a glitch that some people who were a part of the secret glyph project had discovered. Now, these guys, of course, were looking into the glyphs, and they were investigating as to whether or not possibly those dead elites and the glyphs had some sort of correspondence to each other. And they actually found out that if you stack enough grenades nearby dead elite bodies, maybe by massively betraying your teammate and just stacking a ton of grenades in a close quarter area, and then you fire them all at once nearby some dead elites, something absolutely bizarre and somewhat eerie happens.
What? Is that a bug?
Why these bodies rise and stay for a few seconds in an idle position as if they were alive and as if they were almost holding a weapon is really bizarre, especially since the glitch does not exist on Halo 3, which uses the same engine and actually has living elites in the game. That must have been one of the scariest things to ever discover in any Halo game when they were trying to find a connection to these glyphs and these dead elites. Now, is this relevant? Well, we don't really have any idea, but it's definitely cool, and we kind of wanted to include it in this video somewhere because theories exist as to whether or not this could be intentional rather than a glitch, and some people speculate that these could be visions of ghosts.
Yeah, okay, see? This looks like a bug to me. Because from my experience, even though it's reusing the Halo 3 tech and all that stuff, most of the time, like, you can create bugs very easily when adding anything in a game, right? And in that situation, they added dead elites here and there in the game world in ODST, right? I kind of think though that they probably like, I don't know, there's so many options, right? When you're making a game, like in the game engine and stuff, like, I don't know what the tech is that they used for dead bodies, right? Because like there's multiple ways to go about making a dead body spawn. You know, you can create a static mesh. A static mesh, as the name implied, is a 3D mesh that is static, right? So it will never move. It's not dynamic. So, you know, like the stone head, like the big stones there are static meshes. You know, they're not dynamic. They spawn there. They're always going to stay there. You can maybe like disable its visibility and its collision, but the mesh is there. It's not going to move, right? So you can like put static meshes of dead bodies in there. However, like an easy way to also go about this, and also a way to, you know, make those dead bodies disappeared based on the enemy and the AI tech, is to basically use a spawner that spawns real AI, but then you just kill that person right off the bat, right? So in that situation, right, when the player is in a certain radius, you spawn the elite, you kill it, it falls on the ground, and it looks like a dead body. Makes sense. Probably a way that they implemented those elites, that when you explode them with grenades and stuff, there's something that bugs out and they get up for a certain amount of time. Because like, to me, like what we've seen there, let's take a look at it again, right? Let's go and take a look at it again.
And stay for a few seconds in an idle position as if they were alive and as if they were almost holding a weapon is really bizarre, especially since the glitch does not exist on Halo 3, which uses this.
Okay, so see, the reticule here is not red or green. I can't remember if the ODST reticule changes color when you aim at an ally. I think it goes green, right? So if you see that, he's pointing at an elite, right? The reticule is not red or green. It's almost as if he's aiming at a wall, right? Something blank. So that makes me think that they spawned an AI there because it can change position. If they were using a static mesh for the dead bodies, they wouldn't change animation because they wouldn't be able to access the animation tree of the actual NPC, right? Because it's a static mesh. So it's definitely an NPC there in that case, but they've removed like all its AI logic. But for some reason, when you trigger that explosion there with a lot of dead bodies and everything, it looks to me like the AI is actually like accessing some weird animation in the animation tree and chooses to play that animation for a while before reverting to being dead. So to me, that looks like a bug, you know? It definitely looks like a bug. That was a drawn out explanation, but it definitely looks like a bug. Who knows though, right? Who knows?
Just an odd glitch, but a bit more to uncover if maybe they do actually serve a role in this mystery. For instance, if for whatever reason you got one to despawn, like accidentally merged its body into a big door after meleeing it for, you know, like an hour or so in its courtyard, that dead elite body will actually respawn at its original location. And that's not something that occurs with other props like garbage bins or crates. The game...
No, because the way they spawn the crates and stuff is probably very different from the way they spawn AI enemies, right? Because like they probably have more hard rules for AI enemies than they do with crates, because crates are not really that important for gameplay, but those bodies, those enemies, like that tech is really crucial to the gameplay, you know? So that makes a lot of sense to me. Like you don't need to have like such hard rules for respawning crates because they play a very little role in the game. So there's no reason to put that much time and effort and money into that. Oh, wow, okay. That is a very interesting video. So I'm spending a lot of time on it, right? And I'm only halfway, so I didn't think I was gonna do that, but I'm actually gonna separate this into two parts because, you know, time management and all that stuff. I'm loving this a lot because it enables me to go into some deeper subjects, and I'm really enjoying myself. And I'm also very curious to see like what knowledge they got from all that stuff, because like, Obviously, it's still a mystery, so I'm really interested in that. Yeah, guys, don't forget to go ahead, click on the link down in the description below to, you know, actually see the original video, give the guy a view, give the guy a like, and while you're at it, like this video too, guys. It will help me a lot. Alright, guys, so in that note, I will see you in part 2 of Hunting the Last Unsolved Halo 3 ODST Easter egg reaction video. Have a good one.